you know, you are such a good student, you're getting ahead of the class. So we're going to come back to that. There is good evidence, Jerry, and we'll talk about it. There is very good evidence that marijuana is both psychologically and physiologically has some people form dependence. There's not a lot of studies on marijuana, and we're going to talk about that. So I don't want to push your answer off. I'll just want to refer to it a little bit later, if we can. Okay? Raise your hand again. Yes, Jerry.
I have a friend who smokes marijuana, and I asked him one time what it cost. And well, I haven't seen him down for quite a long time, but last time I played golf with him, he asked me if he could smoke marijuana, and I said, yeah, okay, he did. He smoked it. But I asked him what it cost him. He said as little as $150, which is not little to me, and as much as $300. Have you?
Prices are totally irrelevant based on region,
That's
changing all the time.
That was an ounce, he said.
Yeah,
Now,
changing
I
all the
used to
time.
smoke pipe tobacco, and wow, an ounce isn't all that much. So,
It depends on so many factors. And I would not be privy to pricing, but it depends on potency and strain, and it also depends on whether somebody's using green dyed plant material or somebody's using extracts or edibles.
that's one of the things he said, that the kind of marijuana that he's buying for $300 is not the kind of marijuana that they used to sell when I was a kid.
None of it is. Okay. So these are logos which advertise which drug culture. And this goes right into the fact about clothing lines. All right, we're going to see what you said. And ding, 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 the correct answer is marijuana or weed. And it goes back to a company called Seedless, and that is their logo. So you notice that there was no green leaf, there was no word, nothing. But this is a clothing line that is sold in stores, in malls, in Michigan, in West Michigan. And so if it becomes popular at school, kids will want it even if they don't necessarily understand what the meaning is. So I always encourage parents, if you're not sure what that logo is, my kids always tried to pull one over on mom, and sometimes they did. I can tell you the story about the BB gun later, but seriously, so just kind of stay up on top of this stuff. I know some of you said, I don't have a smartphone or I don't use the internet, but these are teaching tools, and you'll see some pictures as we go through tonight where there's a lot of things that we just need to know to kind of stay up to date on things. Okay, you're kind of pulling out of the park there. Okay, that's all right. Which do Berry County youth perceive as most harmful? You're going to get 4 choices here. 3 choices. I'm so glad you can count because I gave that up. Which one do they see as most harmful based on some surveys that we give? Hey, shocker. 95% of high school and middle school youth see tobacco use as more harmful than marijuana or alcohol. So that does not necessarily jive with public opinion, but we'll get there. What percent of Berry County high school youth report past 30-day use of alcohol? And this is actually from a survey called the MyFi. So let's see what you think. Yeah, so they drank alcohol in the past 30 days from the day they were surveyed. Okay. So, 1 out of 5. Now these are high school students. We did not put middle school data in this. So 1 out of 5 high school students reports having drank some amount of alcohol in the past 30 days. This survey was done last year, 2016, anywhere between November and May. It was done at every high school in Berry County. And the one thing is that it is much lower than people think. Now, you folks got it right, but most people think it's much higher. It actually This number, the 20.4% is up a little bit, and we're concerned about that because we've been hanging out in the 17 and 18%, and we'd like to get back there. So, well, we've been doing these surveys for 8 years, and
they're anonymous.
They're anonymous. It's all online, and they are sound surveys. And when you first see the data, you think, okay, this can't be true. And then 2 years later, you get data sets, and 2 years later, so the trends, they're very close. Yeah, they're very close. All right, we got, I think, one more question. Oh, two more. What is this? It does look like earwax, doesn't it? Though I don't know if I want to put that thing in my ear. Let's see what you said. Okay, so this is what is known as a dab. And a dab is a form of concentrated THC. It's actually in a very waxy, resinous type form and very, very high concentrates of THC. So this is not the marijuana of the 70s, 80s, or even the 90s. And the potency, many people are not prepared for the very high level of the mind-altering chemical THC. So this is something that, you know, I never want to scare people. I just want you to be aware of what is happening. So you're going to see some things on that, and you guys had it right. So that must mean that you guys are super, super smart. So let's do our last one here. What drug use culture is associated with this image?
What's that picture?
Yeah.
Okay, there's the answer. This one really stumped me. I got a phone call a year or so ago, and there was all of a sudden unicorn t-shirts, jerseys with the pink sleeves and the different things were very, very popular, and they were even being worn by some male students. And so we started to dig into it, and sure enough, this for some of the kids, it's had real significance. For some of the young kids in middle school, they didn't know, but some of them did. And the place where you would purchase these clothing, either online or in malls, they knew what they were selling the clothing for. So these are things as parents and as caretakers and guardians we just need to be mindful for. We always need to look a little further, and if you just ask people, I'm always available to ask. People will ask me, this is what I found, or this is what I saw, or I'm a little concerned about my niece. She's 20 years old and she's been vaping. And so, you know, find somebody to ask questions. Everybody knows how to get a hold of me. I'll give you my contact number. What I would say is sometimes it's just good to be aware of what the trends are out there. So we're going to talk a little bit. Thank you. Let's see how we are. You guys have been great. You guys have tried something new. I'm very, very proud of you. And here's the results. Except we have a little thing in the middle of it. Can't see what happened here. Oh, shoot, we didn't see what your final score was.
Oh, he's so far up there. Nobody was close.
You know, but you did learn something, right? Okay. So, and really what I want to say is I just want you to learn something new tonight. And what I'm going to show you here, I'm going to get in this, is we're going to go through, we're going to take a look at some things, take a little bit look at data, a little bit at some trends, and then we'll talk a little bit about ways that we're working to prevent some of these issues. So, and I want to be mindful of the time, and I'm told that I can go till 7:30. We do have an evaluation at the end, and hopefully we'll get that far. We might run out of information and we'll be done sooner, or we may run out of time and I have to be quiet. So that was always my problem, right? Okay, so here we go. Do I have anybody that would want to volunteer to sit here and hit the next slide for me? Because I was supposed to bring my staff with me, and because they told me there was only 10 people, I let them go home. So come on up. Sure. So what I just really want is if I say next slide, you just hit me to the next slide. Thank you so much. What's your name? Thank you, Jordan. I'm Liz. Thank you. All right. So Substance Abuse Task Force began in 2004. We were predominantly a methamphetamine task force. Methamphetamine has never been our #1 drug problem, but it has been something that caught everyone's attention. And if there's a silver lining to that very, very dark cloud, it's that we then, in 2007, became a task force of about 35 to 50 partners at any one given time, addressing underage drinking and unsafe use of alcohol, marijuana and emerging drug trends, tobacco, and then medicine or prescription abuse. So we're going to go through, that's my little shameless plug for the Substance Abuse Task Force, and the rest of this will just be pure information. So Jordan's going to click us to the next slide. And we're going to take a look at some local data. And the one thing I always want people to know is that in all Berry County middle school and high schools, the Michigan Profile for Healthy Youth survey is being administered every 2 school years to 7th, 9th, and 11th graders. It is an online survey administered by the Michigan Department of Ed. People like me who have federal grants and who receive funding from the state and from the feds, we have to collect this data so that we can show whether we're being effective or efficient in working with different populations. So we'll take a look at some of what the data tells us. And I did not catch your first name, Mr. Fairstay. Ed, you're going to see that we have 4 sets of data. So that'll give you some idea of where it's at. So okay, Jordan, let's take a look at, oh, this is, I put some in the back for you, so you can grab those. The MyFi talks about perceived ease of access for alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, and prescription drugs, perceived risk of use, peer and parental disapproval of use, and past 30-day use. I should tell you the MyFi is about 160 questions on risk and protective factors, not just substance abuse. It asks kids how much water they drink, how much screen time, how much sleep, whether they wear a seatbelt or a bike helmet, all sorts of things. It's really quite a large repository of great data. It tells us where we need to be working. But because I saw my song and dance is substance abuse prevention, they're going to see substance abuse data. Okay? Yes?
Why 7th, 9th, and 11th?
Great question. And I'm assuming by your name tag that your name is Kent. Not just because you love that county. Okay. So, I'll be here all week, folks. I have some good jokes up my sleeve. I'm just kidding. Because there is a survey out there that runs for 8th graders, 10th graders, and 12th graders, so they think they're capturing everybody. However, that other survey is called the Youth Behavior and Risk Survey, or a Youth Risk Behavior Survey. I always get it mixed up. And it only is done, it's not done in every school. So it's just kind of a statewide conglomerate. Does that help?
Yep.
Okay, so let's take a look at some. All right, this is the percentage of students who have smoked cigarettes in the past 30 days. Now, if you were a data analyst, what do these pictures tell you?
They're experimenting more as they age.
Yep, exactly. I don't know your first name. Kathy is exactly right. As kids get older,
I know,
more
I take all the kids.
more use goes up, and that's normal. We never see too much of it. We don't see too much of that the other way.
It's also going down.
It is. So that is good news. You'll notice that it almost here in 9th grade, it's just what we call stair steps, which when it stair steps down like that in a question like this, and then we get to 11th grade and we see it's really insignificant, but we surveyed over 1,000 high school kids and 600 and some middle schoolers, and so this has been going on since 2010. You can see that the blue is 2010 right up to 2016. So those numbers have really come down overall if you look at 10 and 16. Okay? So people are getting the message. Now, let's take a look at the next slide, because this one's not such good news. So these are the percentage of students who have used an electronic vapor product. Here's one of the problems I have with the state of Michigan. I have no problem sharing my opinion. Electronic vapor product is not what kids call it. They call them vape pens or vaping devices or e-cigs. So a lot of the kids, probably especially the 7th graders, may not understand what this says, and we're not allowed to help in that way, because that could be seen as like when we're helping proctor it, we can't say to them, oh, that means an e-cig. We have to say, well, what do you think it means? All right. So, of concern to me, anybody want to tell me what my concern is with this slide, Ken?
They have stopped using the tobacco and have switched to this.
Why do kids use vaping products, or what are also known as Ns, or e-cigs, or vape pens? I think it's safer. They've been kind of marketed on infomercials and things that it's safer, which we don't know. And they taste like bubblegum and pina colada and birthday cake and tropical paradise and different things. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more about it. So we're really concerned about that. The reason why there's only the 1 year is that the Michigan Department of Ed just added this question in. Okay, so next year when I do the survey, I'll have 2 years worth of data. Third time I'll have a trend. So this is just my baseline. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Jordan, you're doing an awesome job. This is the percentage of students who had at least 1 drink of alcohol during the past 30 days. And you can see what I meant by the trends are pretty solid. It's not really going a lot of places. We were really excited in 2014 when we went down 6% on the high school level. We thought, yay, we did a job. And then this year, this last year, it's really insignificant, but it didn't feel good. I would have liked to have seen it in the same ballpark. But it's a lot less than people think. And generally, we think high school students drink a lot. And in truth, not so much. Okay? All right, let's take a look at the next one, Jordan. Now, this is one of those indicators that we really get concerned about, and this is the percent of students who had 5 or more drinks of alcohol in a row in a couple hours' time. It's what we call binge drinking in the past 30 days. And what Kathy said is also true here. As kids get older, they're going to use more, but our numbers are still pretty low. And you can see that in 2010 and 12, we were at a solid 18 or 19%. Then we've dropped, and then it's kind of just in that little, I call it riding on the little bumps, okay? It's pretty good overall, and we know that our 7th graders are pretty protected. So something happens between 7th grade and 9th grade where kids feel like it's a little more of an opportunity for them to experiment. So sometimes it means less parental involvement. Sometimes it means less parenting time. Sometimes it means that we don't know where our kids are, and you know what? That happens. We don't always know. When we raise our children to be independent. We raise them to take their first steps, to put their own shoes on, to ride a bicycle with training wheels, to ride a bicycle with 1 training wheel, and if you have my daughter, to ride a bicycle without any training wheels at age 20 was quite a feat. But we raise them to be independent. So something happens there where we have less contact, maybe. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. So this is a different type slide. This is the percent of students who reported regular marijuana use to be a moderate or great risk. And the first year that we asked the question was in 2010. So this is not exactly a slide that makes Liz happy. Okay, this is not one that I go, yay, I'm doing my job. This is what we call stair-stepping in the opposite direction. And so how would you interpret this? If someone looks at this, some of you look like you're great data statisticians. How would you interpret this data? What do you think is happening?
There's no risk in marijuana.
Why is that, Ed?
It's in the media all the time.
So if I turn on the TV and they've got a story on you can give marijuana to your pets now, we start to think that it's safe. The truth is we don't know because there's not a lot of credible, truly peer-reviewed research out there about marijuana. So Jerry, this is the part where I can answer all of your questions. Marijuana, cannabis, is a very different drug today than it was in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. It has been cultivated and hybridized for specific strains. There is a complete culture and marketing strategy about marijuana. It's very, very pervasive into our society, and there seems to be a pro-media spin. We tend to see lots of articles in the paper, in social media, even in conversations with our friends at Richie's or at a restaurant. You'll hear people say medical marijuana, they're using it because they have chronic headaches, and so what we're really seeing is some perception of change in a direction that we don't know how that's going to result. We don't know the end result. You do know that in 2016 there was a measure to put recreational use on the ballot, and they ended up not being able to have it on the ballot because of signatures collected within too long of a period. But there is movement afoot for that recreational vote to go in 2018. We as parents and caregivers and grandmas and grandpas and people that have a role in children's lives, we better kind of get jiggy with how we feel about all that, and we better get the facts. A lot of times we listen to legislators and we listen to decision makers, and we find out in the end that they don't necessarily understand all the ramifications of these public acts or these decisions that they're making. There's a lot of intricacies to all this, and I encourage all of you to learn as much as you can. So Jerry, when I see this slide, I'm always concerned. I suspect that the Medical Marijuana Act of 2018 and the perception that marijuana is medicine and that it's legal, which is actually incorrect, but it is changing this, and that young people think it's safe and therefore okay. So that's a bit of a concern. And people's use of marijuana is changing as well too. We're going to see some trends in how people are using marijuana today. All right, Jordan, you're so good at this. So, you know what's really strange? Jordan, would you go back to that last slide that I hated? Okay, so I see that. Now, what's odd about this one? Go ahead and go to the other one again. Let's go back. So this is actual 30-day use of marijuana. What do you think here? It's not adding up, is it? What did you expect to see?
Higher and higher.
You expected to see the stair steps in the other way, didn't you? This is a miracle, people. We want to protect this. We are seeing just small little bumps up. We saw that huge dive down, but something is happening to keep kids from actually using it. Their perception of harm has decreased greatly, but their use has not increased greatly. So let's all keep doing whatever we're doing. There's some education and some research out there that suggests it's because of the protective factors in kids' lives. They still know that this is not good for young people. This isn't something they should be involved in. They can get in trouble for this. So there's some place somewhere where that message is going through. So this is a very good slide. Would I like to see it lower? Yep. Will I take it like boop, 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 boop? You bet. Okay. Any questions on that? Yes?
Are you going to compare with other drugs in this tonight too? Because it kind of follows together.
You've seen alcohol and you saw tobacco. We're going to see prescription drugs. The other ones are very insignificant. They do ask about cocaine, they do ask about meth, they do ask about heroin, and there's nothing there. There's nothing to see. Young people in Berry County, you're seeing what they're saying. So I don't know if
to
that...
make meth, it doesn't cost it. Really, they're just going to people's...
Our young people aren't reporting it. We might have had, and I can show you where to look for the data online. It's totally statistically insignificant.
So you're saying there was those questions asked?
Oh yeah,
there's
absolutely.
Data worth showing you.
Absolutely, yeah. And if you want, before I leave today, I'll bring it up on the internet and show you. It won't be in this nice, beautiful way to read it. It'll be in the way the state gives it
That's
to me.
good to know, but
Yeah.
then, I mean, it's one of those things that
Out of
does it
those-
cost them anything? Who's gonna know?
Meth is pretty scary.
Right.
And most of the time in Berry County, the people that are using it are older than high school age. And I don't have some absolute numbers, so that we don't see it in that high school population or the middle school.
And this is all the stuff that's easy access, the alcohol, tobacco.
Pretty general. Yes?
Maybe they're spending more of their money on the vapor stuff now, because they can do that all the time, where they can't do this as much.
That's changing too. I don't know your first name. Wendy. I thought I heard somebody call you Wendy. I was going to guess that. So Wendy, that is changing too, because on August something of 2016, federal rules went into place finally about vaping products. And it made it illegal for anyone under the age of 18 to possess or use or consume. Before that, they were not illegal. They weren't classified as illegal for under age 18. So I can tell you that when we've done some informal asking of all ages, most people purchase their vaping devices at places like vaping shops, which, are you all familiar with vaping shops? You know where they are? Have you ever driven by one at night? Well, you should. Go by after dark and look inside, and you will understand what they mean by cloud chasing. You can't see. It's like a fog in there. It's like probably less than a 0.1 of a mile visibility. It's filled with
Well, they're
vapor.
making them purposely put on more smoke, like they used to not be.
And people do tricks with
And
the
they
vape.
love it.
Yeah. So it's catchy. It attracts certain people.
So is there any here in Berry County?
Yes. Several.
Several.
One out by Walmart. Juice vapor is the one that I think you should drive by at about 8:30 when it's dark.
We'll just walk in
Vapor.
one. Where's that one?
It's out by Papa Murphy's Pizza in that complex. I'm not picking on them, but you should drive by and get familiar with. You can see it. I've pointed it out to my husband, and he's like, "What is that?" You live with the drug lady, and you don't know what that is. So
We all know what the drive-bys are tonight now.
it's eye-opening. It's eye-opening.
Are the vapors just as hazardous to people around them as?
But, Sue, I would probably hazard a guess that there's very few studies. There was one out of England that said, nah, so maybe not. But my guess would be that we don't know what those chemicals are. Just now, the FDA is requiring people to label what their solutions or their juice is. And we don't know how those change when they have a heat or a chemical reaction, because that's what it is. They got a little battery in there that makes it vaporize, and so you've got to, I learned this in chemistry. Aren't you impressed?
Yeah. You're doing so well.
Chemical reactions, heat change chemicals into other chemicals, and so we do know there's polyethylene glycol. We do know that it contains nicotine and other hazardous chemicals. And probably the big concern is especially for little bitties who get a hold of the vaping juice or the vape pen, those solutions are toxic if they're ingested. So that drinking of that fluid has resulted in a lot of poison control calls. And they smell good. They don't taste so good from my understanding, so.
I have another question.
Sure.
Like the heroin and meth. Are you seeing it in any particular generation, like the millennials or
It's all over the
generation
place.
X? It's just a broad spectrum.
It's not selective, and it's, like I mentioned to you, I've done this for over 27 years, and one thing that I really came to understand early on is that people who have addiction are not bad people, they're sick. They're sick people who need to get well. And sometimes the reason that they have become sick is by the choices they've made. Sometimes the reason that they have become sick is by a combination of the choices they've made and the circumstances that have come and been dropped at their feet. So it's different for everybody. I know one of the questions that somebody asked was, explain to me how someone's brain how someone who's using what is their brain thinking, what are they thinking. It's different for everybody, but brain chemistry does change with any substance use, and over time it affects all that brain chemistry that I didn't do well in brain chemistry, did I? But it affects all those serotonin and dopamine levels, and then you really kind of have a mishmash of a mess up there where they're using a lot of times just to get back up close to feeling normal or okay, not euphoria. Okay? So the misnomer is that the person who's using those substances is always in that euphoria zone. Well, that euphoria zone only is early on in their chemical dependency. Okay? So a lot of times you have people that are seeking to get back to that point, so that's why they have to use more and more different things.
So why is drugs so bad here? I mean, listen, I moved here, and ever since I moved here, the drugs in this county is
unreal. I came from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and the drugs wasn't even half as bad as they are up here.
And I haven't looked at youth data.
Yeah, what's your name?
I don't know your first name.
Sherry.
Sherry, what I can tell you is I look at data from other counties, and Berry County is a lot better off than some counties for youth data. We're a lot better off in our adult data, which I'm going to show you in a minute, than some counties, and some counties are better than us, meaning that there's less. Sometimes I think it's a matter of environment in terms of, and I'll say that for me, sometimes because of the places that I hang out with and the people I work with and my colleagues, I sometimes get into this feeling that it's more of an issue than I realize. I think there's hope, and I hope that when we leave tonight that you have some hope, and you're the biggest hope. You as parents and guardians and caregivers are, and grandpas and grandmas, you are the biggest protective factor in young people's lives. The connection between us and the young people we are raising or we are living with is tremendous, and that link is probably why this number is as low as it is. So I want to give you hope. I just want to show you data. I want to show you some things to be aware of, but I also want you to walk out of here feeling empowered to talk with your kiddos, to talk with your, you know, if you're a grandma and grandpa, talk with everybody in your family about, hey, you know, let's go do something. Let's make sure, you know, if you're gonna go out, you know, maybe you have an adult child who's gonna go out and leave kiddos home alone. Hey, don't do that. Bring them over to my house. I'll play Monopoly with them, or I'll play, you know, spend some time. We are a huge protective factor in kids' lives. So the other thing is that if you can get kids involved in things like 4-H, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, youth group, those are incredible protective factors. I didn't bring that data because we'd be here till 10:30 tonight looking at data, but connectivity to family, school, and community is a huge protective factor for families. So just coming to stuff like this, going to church, being involved in a community group, like I said, like 4-H, or being involved in a play group or something like that.
You get more people know their kids when they see them.
Exactly.
You get back to it.
Exactly. So, yes.
And I have another question. Are you saying infants or children that are intermediate addicted, are you seeing?
Yeah, but I have no data.
No.
I have no data, and I don't know where a data repository would be, because hospitals do not have to share that data because of HIPAA, and because private insurance doesn't have to share data with me. So I have asked everywhere there is, and so have a lot of other people that
So
do
you have
my
no idea how
job.
many babies are born?
We have some national idea, but we would not have any county level. We could go to the Center for CTAC, Center for Traumatic
No,
Assessment.
that's just funny to know.
We can get some regional ideas, but you have to remember they're only going to give you data for the kids they see in a non-identifying way. So again, that's that environment, that perception. So very low percentage of children, very, 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 very low. Although when we do see a case of it, it's going to be traumatic for all those involved. And if some of you are fostering or things like
Ours was
that,
born here when
those are going to be the things that you see. Again, environment. So you're more aware of things, so it makes it seem like it's maybe more of a norm. And I don't have any
I
data.
hate that now it's normal. Just apologize that.
Yeah. And I don't know that it is normal. Remember, less kids drink than we think. And remember, the numbers of heroin or cocaine use are so insignificant, I didn't even show you a slide. So
Yeah.
that's some good news. So I saw one more hand, and then I've got things that I want to show you. So, what, Jerry?
I wanted to stay in the focus here a second. My wife and I are raising 5 grandchildren.
I know, you're my hero.
And one of them's off to college. But,
Michigan Tech.
uh,
No, Michigan.
But U of M, Ellie is
Yeah.
school with U of M, she's going to go to the ball. But they're all in the band, studies the Olympiad, in that Odyssey of the Mind, cross country, soccer, we play soccer, throwing apple players, and it keeps us busy taking them to these places and back. But the idea here is we encourage them to go into these because they're going to, actually the kids, their peers now, will have as much or more effect on them than we do. And other kids that are involved in these athletics and these other programs have positive social attitudes. And therefore, if we can enroll our kids in these things, that's who they'll be associating with. Other kids with positive social attitudes, and therefore they'll have positive social attitudes. And so far, it has worked. For our Emily, for example, is in the banner now. She's fourth in a class of.
Congratulations, you deserve
fourth
some
in
of
class
that.
of 200.
She deserves a lot of it, but you and Sandy deserve a lot of credit for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, my hat is off.
We're busy, yes, we're running and running and running. Pick them up and drop them off, pick them up, drop them off, but it works.
And everything that you mentioned there is a protective factor.
Yeah.
So if you think of a protective factor as, I always think of it as I'm wrapping my kid in a great big spongy Band-Aid of love. Now, if you could see my son with his full beard, and he's almost 23 now, you'd laugh at that, because somewhere I probably failed because of his beard, but, all right, I'm looking, and I've got 35 minutes, and I want to get into some other things, so I'm going to move to the next slide here. You asked about other substances, so anything that was significant I brought, and this is the past 30-day use. I did not bring lifetime use slides, because again, I'm going to be here till midnight. This is the prescription drug use such as Ritalin, Adderall, or Xanax without a doctor's prescription during the past 30 days. So this is not great news, but this is better than a lot of times we think. Problem is that a lot of times kids will share prescriptions, take them to school and share them, and that can be a felony because these are controlled substances, and your kids should be talked to about the fact that taking medicine to school and sharing it is never a good idea. And you should think about that one 16 times and then still choose no. You had a question?
What do they do to people that don't need them?
Ritalin and Adderall are stimulants, and they're uppers. Xanax is a benzodiazepine, a depressant, a downer. So Xanax usually makes people fall asleep and makes them extremely relaxed, is an anti-anxiety. Benzodiazepines are highly addictive, and Ritalin and Adderall, Concerta, and I've got a slide that'll just talk about some of them, and we'll talk about that a little bit further. Let's go ahead and see the next one. So this is the other side of that question that they asked you. Jordan, can you go back for a minute? Now, what I want you to see is this right here. This is an oops. The state of Michigan had to reword this question because 7th graders didn't understand it. So they didn't necessarily, what they found was they weren't seeing the without a doctor's prescription. And as you know, a lot of 7th graders still are being treated for childhood ADHD, okay? So if you go to the next slide, we also see some of that oops effect in the first 2 years because a lot of kids have taken Tylenol 3 for a dental extraction or they got braces. They did not see the part without a doctor's prescription. And so they've really worked. That's not us doing our job. That's the state and other people working so kids understand the question a bit better before they answer it. Okay. So this is actually some good news, but I can tell you that I'm very concerned about this, and I'll give you an example. My children are almost 23 and almost 21. And when my son was just almost 20 years old, he had to have all 4 wisdom teeth out. My son's kind of a big kid, and you know how you see or you hear about all these experiences where the kid was just so funny and the parents are videotaping it because it was hilarious and they were dopey and cute. Okay, first of all, I don't think that's anything we should be taking videos of and ever putting out on social media. What if your kid wants to be the president of the United States one day? Now you put on Facebook your kid on drugs. It can be taken out of context, and it can totally be worked over so it doesn't say that they went to the dentist. It can get taken. So please, think about that. Now let me go back to my story. My son was not one of those happy kids. My son was violent and aggressive and combative when he came out of the medicine from being sedated. It was all I could do to get him out of the doctor's office and into my truck. Okay? They handed me the prescription as they walked me in his wheelchair out the door. And they said, get it filled and get it in him quick and keep him on it. Good luck. Don't let the door hit you in the feet. Okay, on the way out. All right. So because of this factor that son was not happy. He wasn't easily handleable. And about 2 out of every 10 kids will have that. 1 out of 5 will have that. 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 4 will react that way. They kind of pushed me out there with the prescription, and I went to, at that time, Bosley's Pharmacy was still open, and I locked my son in the truck, and I ran in there with the prescription, and I handed it to him. And while I'm in there, I hear my son cussing with every word under the sun in the parking lot. And, okay, yeah, okay, it gets better, okay? Then he sets off the alarm and it's going, in the parking lot. And I'm like, yeah, that's my son out there, can you hurry it up? And they said, Liz, this is a prescription for 30 Norco. Do you want this? I said, what? They gave my 20-year-old, I said, my kid's a big kid. They wanted him to take 2 Norco every 4 to 6 hours for pain. Well, I filled the prescription because, you know, you don't want to be that mom that keeps their kid in pain that they shouldn't have. Now, let me tell you, my mom reminded me that she gave me Tylenol because that's all we had back in 1986 when I had my wisdom teeth out and I lived. Right. Of course, she said that several times in the next 3 days to the point where I went, I don't want to hear it. But, so he was allowed to use 10 Norco, and then we had 20 left. Why? 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 Now, in the situation, could I wish I had gone back and done that differently? You bet. If my daughter doesn't need her wisdom teeth out, but if she ever does, and if I go with her, I will be looking at them like, now you're not going to be handing me any script for Norco. You can give them something that's not a controlled substance, right? Well, they'll say, well, we have to control their pain. They shouldn't have any pain. And it's like, the pain sometimes makes us slow down and rest. And mouth pain is one of those that we usually recover from very quickly. If it continues, then you have a problem. But you can talk with your doctor or your dentist beforehand and say, now wait a minute, this is a lot of medicine.
My daughter came home with the full 300s.
Yeah. Some of the dentists are now starting to do that, and I say, ooh yeah, okay? I won't ever go back to the dentist or the oral surgeon who took my son's wisdom teeth out. And I have communicated that with them, that they're working with young people predominantly, and they're exposing them to a high-powered narcotic.
Yeah.
Okay?
Why does the doctors push all these drugs the way they do?
They are
do?
bound by their Hippocratic oath to treat pain.
Well, my doctor says, all you gotta do is say you want it, and I have to give it to
Do
you.
you think it was why how he reacted to pain, that they thought he needed something strong?
No, they
Or
found out
no?
that's their standard.
That is.
With a refill. You had to call and get it, but it wasn't on
But if
there.
he was still
But
okay
they
after-
told me, if he needs more, call.
Okay.
And we're- Yeah, my son's a big guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But still, those are young people.
That's what I remember.
I throw up when I take it, so I just usually use
Well,
most
there's
pain
parents that take their kids.
But Cheryl,
Sherry.
Close.
okay, I lost that one. Doctors and mid-levels, nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, their pain is the 5th vital sign, and they are charged with treating it. They don't want people to be uncomfortable. Having had 2 loved ones in my life go through knee replacements and torn rotator cuff surgery, those are pains that need to be treated for the most part, at least initially. And so there are good uses of that, and you would trust your physician to help you through that process. I am not here to say that physicians are wrong. What I'm here to say is that we have to be advocates for ourselves and our children, and we have to have, and I'm showing you my own example of when I dropped the ball. I should have been saying, now what are you going to do about pain control before they ever opened my son's mouth and took those teeth out?
Well, we went through 11 surgeries with the boys. We have one that has a huge problem with drugs, and he reacts totally different.
Yes.
He's had 5 surgeries. The last 2 surgeries has only been tolerable. The first 3 was like a nightmare because nobody had listened to us on what he was doing after they did it.
Right, and that's where you have to be, your child, your grandson, your child, whoever, you have to be their biggest advocate. My daughter had a lot of surgery. She had a birth defect on her kidneys and bladder. And I can remember the day that the nurse did not like me And I didn't care.
That's too bad.
And then the next day when they gave my daughter kaopectate, she spit it in the nurse's face. But then the nurse really didn't like me. But you have to be advocate for them. And so my daughter doesn't react well with Versed. They used Versed a lot for her surgeries. And so before we went in, I would look in and I'd have a notebook and I'd say, on such and such a date, she adversely reacted to Versed. On such and such a date, she adversely reacted to Versed. Now this was before they had EMRs, but now they have EMRs or medical records where they can look that up too. And I would even say to, I don't know how old your children are that you're caring for, but I would even say to them, can you please put it in the record that this medicine doesn't work well now, because the spectrum system is big and some of these EMRs are going to start talking to each other. So it's good for us to be advocates. So, all right, let's take a look at what we got here. So I want to show you, remember I said there's some ways I just can't get data, so I'm happy with what I can get. I cannot tell you what people are in treatment for across Berry County, but I can tell you based on Medicaid and state subsidized funding. So Jordan's going to show us a slide, and it's also, you can go to the next one. This is actually 3 years worth of data. This is Berry County data based on the amount of people that come to Berry County Mental Health for substance abuse treatments and services when they receive Medicaid or they use state dollars to pay for their treatment. So it's really kind of a nice way for us to track it. I will not be able to tell you what private pay or insurance carries because that information is not made available to us because of HIPAA. But I can tell you that in Berry County in 13, 14, and 15, alcohol is the #1 drug for treatment admission for substance use services. It kind of fluctuates. Again, it's going to be bumps in the road. #2, if you go just by numbers, is going to be marijuana, although that is changing. It used to be much higher, and you know what's changed it has been the advent of the medical marijuana laws that went into place in 2008. What I want you to notice is that meth is way over there in the 5th position, and we actually have seen that number go down to 9%. In the early 2000s, it was very high, and it actually was about the third drug for treatment, and we'd see some numbers in the 20%. Okay? So we are feeling pretty good about that number is coming down. What I want you to do is I want you to be a visual math expert, and I want you to take this gray line and this black line and stack them on top of each other. Do that for me? Are you some of those people that can do that? So if I take this gray line at 16.2% and I tack it on to 15.4%, that'll take me up to, let's see, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. I'm really bad at math. I think it's going to be somewhere right about here. So what does that make heroin and opiates together? #2. Fast approaching 38.3%. So again, this is Medicaid and state-funded treatment, but it does concern us. Okay? You can see kind of where those trends are. Okay?
What's the last, the green one, the bright green one?
The bright green one is stimulants or other. So that's going to be people, cocaine, crack. Oh no, cocaine and crack is the dark green one. It's going to be amphetamines, what we call okay? All right, sometimes Ritalin, sometimes Concerta or Adderall. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the next slide. And this one I can't even make heads or tails out of. It's just showing you that those trends are out there. And red is marijuana, so you can see this is kind of across West Michigan. So I can't remember your name in the back. Vi. So this gives you kind of a regional perspective. The black is alcohol, so you can see it's kind of true for almost every county in our region of West Michigan. And you can kind of see that the red and the blue is a little bit. It's not a great slide. If you want to see it better afterwards, come on up and I'll show it to you. So we're at 10 after. Am I hitting targets for people or am I way off base? No one's got nothing left and run out saying I can't stand her, but okay. So let's take a look at some things we're going to go through really super quick, okay? But I'll give you time to look at it. So Jordan's going to hit the slide. I'm going to take a look at some trends. So go ahead, Jordan. Go ahead. Okay, so these are ENDS, or electronic vaping devices, delivery systems. You can see all the different forms that electronic cigarettes take. And then you see lots of different vials of e-juice, or that's usually what it's called, is juice or nectar. They usually smell good and taste good, and their marketing is a big thing. Okay? The FDA is now starting to ask people to reveal their secrets or their recipes. And not going over some of them. Yes. Yes,
The berry stuff is, see the one that looks like Cracker Jack?
absolutely.
Little kids, that's their.
Yum, yum, yum. Okay. All right, Jordan. So, coil it, drink it, juice it, vape it. That's all vaping language, just like cloud chasing is. And again, you see there's some more examples of vaping devices. What I want parents to know is that these are also, they can have dual purpose. So some people are buying them now so that they usually buy them online or at vape shops, but so they're very expensive. They can go from just a few dollars to hundreds of dollars. And sometimes they're dual purpose, where they can be used to vape marijuana or cannabis extracts. Okay. Some people will put other medicine or different things in them just to see what happens. Again, I wasn't that good at chemistry to trust myself.
They're getting the same thing, just like in a bong from some of those bars, what are those?
Hookah.
Hookah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the new thing.
Yeah, it doesn't involve a battery. These involve a battery and propylene, polypropylene glycol. So, all right, let's take a look at the next here. So this is what you can find if you do a Google search for vaping images or vaping clothing. So this is all clothing that people will seek if this is something they want to identify themselves as being a cloud chaser or a vapor. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So we're going to talk about marijuana. So we're just going to zip through some things here. So let's go to the next slide, Jordan. This is marijuana themed clothing. So I'm out in the community a lot. I know a lot of people, and so one day I was walking out of Walmart, and a kid that knew me said hi to me, and he was with his grandma. And I looked at his shirt, and his shirt had, it wasn't the Oscar the Grouch one made out of marijuana, but it was something kind of close. And I looked at him and I said, "What is on your shirt?" And his grandma said, "Oh, isn't it cute? It's Sesame Street." And I looked at him, and he just looked at me. And I said, "Oh boy, that shirt's not so good to wear out in public when you see people like me." And Grandma said, "What do you mean?" So I'm never afraid to, I had a relationship or something with him, and I felt comfortable to say it. I hope Grandma went back and realized what was happening here. Okay? So let's take a look at the next slide. We talked about 420. So they don't even have to use words for 420. They've got the hand symbols. Okay? Road signs, different things. Do you have a question, Vi?
Wasn't there one of those shirts that looked like a Nike sign?
Yep. You want to
So
go
that
back?
one threw me off.
Yeah, and it says just hit it.
Yep, I just did it.
Just hit it?
Yeah, that refers to like marijuana culture of hitting a dab or hitting a bomb.
But see, I would have saw that and just thought Nike.
Yep.
But, yeah,
So look again.
You think it was just do it, yeah.
just because of what it says.
Yep. Okay, let's take a look. Let's go ahead. We gotta go to another one here. So this is medical marijuana. So one of the things that happens is I'm actually preparing for a big presentation on Wednesday about the truths and myths about marijuana. So I spent about 40 hours of my life that I wish I could get back on 99.5% of websites where there is no peer review, there is no credible sites or sources. And I literally had like 3 websites that actually I could trust that were the National Institute of Health, the National Institute of Drug Abuse, and then one other that I can cite that has good research and sources on it. And I could not find, one of the sites I went in, I said, benefits of medical marijuana. And everything that they sourced was from NORML or from the Cannabis Club. Okay, you can't cite things that are biased. You have to have non-biased sites. So one thing to realize is that everything on the internet is not true. So, we can be smarter than everybody by just knowing that. So this is a one here. I wanted to blow it up and I didn't. But what it says is that marijuana is safer than peanuts because 100 people die annually from peanut allergies and nobody dies from marijuana. This is a big argument. People do die from marijuana. They die from car accidents, or there have been some deaths from accidental, hallucinations or accidents when people were highly, highly intoxicated or impaired by marijuana. But there's just so much belief that it doesn't cause problems. That's what we're up against. So, all right, let's take a look at the next one. So this again is the dabs and the shatters and the waxes. This is not the marijuana of the 70s, right, Jerry? It's not green and leafy. Cheech and Chong are not in that picture. And if you go to the next slide, these are the rigs that are used to use these. And it involves fire, smoking. Okay, and you see that 710 there? That would be your Q2 butane hash oil. Okay, let's take a look at the next. This is again how dabs and shatters and waxes are used. So I go around to all the vendors in Berry County who sell tobacco, alcohol, 2 or 3 times a year. And one of my favorite little gas stations started to sell these little butane torches. And I looked at the cashier when I was in there and I said, "Well, what are you selling these for?" She goes, "I don't know, I guess people want to make creme brulee." And I looked at her and I said, "Come on." I was not born yesterday, and she kind of got this smirk on her face and she said, "We sell a lot of them." I said, "But do you know what you're selling them for?" And she goes, "Yeah, I know." And I said, "I'll be calling," I'm not going to tell you who it was because I'll give it away. "I'm going to be calling your corporate headquarters today and see if they know what you're selling." She goes, "Well, we had customers ask for them." I said, "Doesn't mean you need to sell it."
Do you have to be a certain age to buy that?
No. Some places will make you be 18, but it's really up to them what their policy is. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the next one. So these are medibles or edibles or marijuana-infused products. These became legal under Public Act 283 in December of 2016. And people who have a license, or who have certification to use medical marijuana now legally can use medibles or marijuana-infused products in the state of Michigan. So that can be anything from cupcakes, brownies, hand lotions, tinctures, drinks, candy. Now, these are being marketed towards kids. So they're coming from out of state because it's not legal to make them right now in the state of Michigan, which people are. It's illegal. But they are using candy a lot of times. These are the wrong hands. This has got a high level of THC in it. It's usually the extracted oil or concentrate. And one gummy bear is gonna, if a little kid got a hold of that. So what I always tell people is if this is your reality and you got someone in your home who uses medical marijuana and has the certification to do so, it's not a good sight or scene if you have your stuff out and somebody gets into it and doesn't know what it is. Because, let's go to the next slide. You can see you have gummy candies, you have candy bars, you have energy drinks. Those all look good to kids. There's Nutter Butters in there. My kids would have eaten a whole box of Nutter Butters in one sitting if I'd have let them. But usually I eat them in one sitting, so they weren't here. But take a look at the next. And these are gummy bears that have been infused with THC extract. And then there's a cookie. So this cookie says on the label, consume in small amounts. So that cookie is supposed to, you're supposed to, for the dose of medical marijuana, you're supposed to eat 1/8 of that cookie. People don't eat 1/8 of the cookie.
Who's going to get a cookie and take one little bite out of it?
So the problem that we're seeing in emergency rooms now is people are eating the cookie. They ate the bite of cookie and they didn't feel any effects. Well, it's not. It's going to take longer because it has to go into the stomach and through the digestive system into the blood into the nerve system. So it takes longer, so they don't feel the effects, so they eat the whole cookie. And then they're in a situation where they've consumed too much. It's called a green out. They will not call it an overdose because nobody in the culture of cannabis use, nobody wants to call it an overdose because they have said for years you cannot overdose on marijuana. But they're calling it a green out, and it has to do with acute vomiting, nausea, dizziness, sometimes paranoia, sometimes anxiety, panic attack, distorted reality, sweating, increased heart rate. So when you get these folks in the emergency room, it looks like a panic attack. and they don't feel good. They're throwing up, they're nauseous, and it's because they've consumed too much. Yes?
If someone like that was eaten, let's say, by
A kiddo?
parents,
Okay, by parents.
and little infants or toddlers would get a hold of crumbs, how would that affect
It wouldn't be good, and we actually, the thing is that, I don't know your first name.
Carol?
Carol?
Yes.
Okay, Carol, we don't know, because none of this stuff is labeled, and there's no chemically, there's no Food and Drug Administration process for it. An Oreo is an Oreo no matter where you buy it, what time you eat it, what size package you bought it in. The Oreo that I ate in Colorado is the same as the Oreo I ate in Florida and France and all around. We don't know. We don't know what strain or what potency is in that cookie.
The reason I ask is because we're foster parents.
Thank you.
And a lot of the foster kids we get are from drug abusive situations.
They are.
Well, you send your children or the children to visit.
Yes.
What do they eat? Sometimes they come back and they react like off of a wall, inside out. Like,
here's for them bags of candy. That's all you
I'm looking at that stuff and going, oh my goodness. They could bring anything into the office without a wrapper up.
Right. Well, I
How
would
do they?
hope, I work with a lot of DHS folks, so I would hope they would look at that, but you're right, we don't know. So have a talk. Have a talk with your caseworker and tell them, when my kiddos got back from visitation, they were bouncing off the walls. Can we find out what was going on there so that I know how to better prepare? Maybe they'll find out, well, they went to McDonald's, or maybe, whoever brought them some candy bars and they were wrapped. And so you can just work together, advocate with your foster care worker and your caseworker there, and just kind of watch, have her and observe. It might not be anything, but you never know. Okay.
So the Food and Drug Administration has nothing to do with it?
No, because marijuana is a Schedule I drug and it is illegal federally. So only the states that have medical marijuana are breaking the federal law by allowing that, and there's nobody doing any testing or any regulation. So a lot of people don't realize that. And they may have thought, well, my grandma had cancer and she used some marijuana at the end and it helped her stop vomiting, and she was able to talk with us and she wasn't in as much pain. That's how the medical marijuana law was originally intended, and it was kind of sold that way to us. But it is much more than that, and it's become much
easy
more.
to get a wonderful license.
Yeah.
For just one thing of pain.
Yes, certification is, so most of the time, people who have that are not getting it for end-of-life care, they're getting it for some other reason. And probably some of it's not legitimate. Occasionally I get reports, and I know that we have about, and I meant to bring that, a year or so ago, I did know exactly how many people we had living in Berry County. I knew all 83 counties. I had a printout of how many people were certified for medical marijuana in our county, and I don't have it. It was well over 1,000. It was like 1,500. Let's take a look at the next slide. I've got about 3 minutes, and then Dawn's going to kick me out. So this is one of those things. This is tinctures. Cannabis-infused beer. There's now cannabis-infused coffee. Chronic tonic is a tincture. The indica are actually transdermal patches that are being sold. Okay? So these are all marijuana-infused products, and the last bottom line is a line of healthcare products. Yes?
Can you buy that at the store?
You cannot. But you can order them online. And you can buy them by people who perhaps are selling them illegally. So I just Google searched these and these came up. Okay?
Why are they making it so easy for people to get these medical marijuana licenses? There is an ad shop that would pay
Yes.
$150.
That's law. That's the law that we voted for. 63% of Michigan voted for it. And Berry County was no exception. 64% of Berry County, 63 or 64% of people in Berry County approved the law in 2008. So, and the new laws, Public Act 281 and 282, passed the Senate and the House overwhelmingly. So our legislators pushed it. 283, Public Act 283 is what's allowing the marijuana-infused products. And that passed the Senate and the House with flying colors. People didn't know. People are, I think perhaps what's happening, if I say it fairly, is we're being told one thing when really another thing is happening. So this is why we have to, we have to get kind of smart.
We have to do research.
We do. So
And
let's
not
take a
just
look.
say, yeah.
Dawn's she's gonna tell me I have to go, but let's take a look at a couple other things. I wanna finish on this. I promised this. We talked a lot about being an advocate for your child, but here's a list. Jordan, go to the next slide, and then, this is a list of prescription pain meds. Get familiar with those names. And when you're taking your kiddos to the doctor, just say why. Tell me why. If you think this, I need you to help me manage this because I'm not comfortable giving my child controlled substances. But if they have to have surgery or something, tell me what the best plan is, the shortest duration, the plan to get home without pain meds, that kind of stuff. And then let's take a look at the next one. These are the other controlled prescription meds that are very common: Xanax, Valium, Ativan, Lunesta, Ambien, Adderall, Concerta, and Ritalin. There's more, but these are often ones that I hear parents or guardians talking about. Okay, so let's take a look here. There is a connection between those pain meds and heroin. So you saw it when I showed you the data of the people that come into treatment. So let's take a look at this one, and then we're going to zip to the end, and you guys are going to go off into the sunset. So Jordan, let's go to the next one. So right here, my favorite slide. I stole it from Dr. Oz. I'm not always a fan of him, but it was very well said, and it was prettier than I could make it. What is the goal of taking this prescription?
Feeling good.
But, no, I'm saying when you're at the doctor with your littles, or for yourself, say to your doctor, what's the goal of me taking this? Why do I need this?
You also need to ask what the harm is too.
Exactly. So there's a question right there, Sherry, that says, are there any risks to me from these pills? Make that doctor or that nurse practitioner or your PA answer the questions. Show that you're interested and you're not just there to get a quick fix. Show them that you really want to know. So how and when should I take these pills? My husband just had major surgery on his shoulder, and I got differing news from the nurse and the doctors, and I said, well, wait a minute. The nurse is telling me to take it this way, and the docs wrote it this way. What's the truth? And it threw them off guard. They're like, well, we got to do what the doctor said, but if I were you, I'd do. And I said, no, then the doctor needs to change that. Yeah. How long should I be taking these pills? Say to the doctor, how long am I going to be on these? So, if I just had a tooth extracted, what are my other options? And what do I do with any extra pills? You guys know you can take them. There's 6 pharmacies in Berry County and 4 law enforcement locations that will take back meds. Okay. So, I am going to have you go zip till you get to my contact information. That's true. Okay, next one. Next one. Okay. 948-4200 is my phone number. You can call me there. They answer the phone 8 to 4, but I'm usually there much earlier. Well, not much earlier, but I'm always there later. If you have any questions, you can ask me. But let me say this. If you think that you need help, professional help, I want you to go back 2 slides, Justin, Jordan. I renamed you. One more. And I want you to call Berry County Mental Health at 948-8041. Professional help is always available, and we don't turn people away because they don't have money or they don't have insurance. Okay? If your insurance does not participate with us, we will help you find somebody who does. Yes, Mary, did you want to say something?
Yes. The last part of the one slide, a couple of slides ago, was what do I do with the meds that I'm not going to use? I had a friend tell me yesterday, now this is Hospice of Kalamazoo, here, I'll say it, that when her fiance passed away a few days ago, that they told her she could keep all the pills from morphine down.
It's changing.
It must be changing.
My dad passed away. my dad passed away December 1 of 2015. He passed away, thank you very much. And they left the meds. Later that day, I took everything and I took it down to the Hastings City Police and put it in a box. Some hospices will actually count them all up and they have a system, but I think they're going away from that because they don't want the liability.
Yeah, because when my son
It's a
died,
diversion.
Actually, she had to put it in a bag and mix it.
Yeah. Everybody's a little bit different.
well, I was just curious because when my son died, hospice was there, and it was just seconds.
So they took all the medicine?
And they took everything, and I'm like, and she said, well, they said they were just gonna throw them away, they don't take them back, and I
don't
said,
think
I can't
some of the
believe
hospices
that.
cannot. And like you said, some of them actually will adulterate them and make them unusable right in front of you, and they'll tell you they'll duct tape it, they'll add something to it, and then you'll put it in your trash, and you'll sign a paper that said you watched so-and-so. So everybody's a little bit different, and that all has to do with some changes that went into place. What I can tell you, Mary, is I go to the household hazardous waste at the fairgrounds 2 times a year, and we take meds back there. And
I was just shocked.
2 years ago, I started to see
I really
comfort
was.
kids come through, and
Because-
I've never seen them come through. So it's got to be a change in the hospice regs and policies and
They said it
practices.
was because 5 years ago, our father-in-law died, and they took all the meds.
Yeah.
Okay, just this year, in February, our mother-in-law died.
I'm sorry to hear
And
that.
they didn't take none of that. I mean, she had morphine and everything, they didn't, but they told us to take them to a pharmacy or police station.
They would leave it in just people's hands.
So right now, what I want to tell you is if you all live in Berry County and you have controlled subs and you want to get rid of them, you've got the household hazardous waste where you can drive through the pig barn and wave at me. I'll be there. Or you can go to the Sheriff's Department, Hastings City Police, Nashville, or Middleville's village offices by their police department. They will take controlled substances and non-controlled. If you're just taking back non-controlled, over-the-counter, regular prescriptions that are not controlled substances, the 6 pharmacies will take them for you. And that would be Hastings Pharmacy. Penick is they might not take them. They're working on some compliance issues they'll get it soon, but it's not right now. Family Fair will be back up and running once their store reset is done, I understand. And then Dalton Family Pharmacy, Middleville Pharmacy Care, and Wykes out at Gun Lake.
Well, Sandy, she said she took them to the sheriff's department. But she had me put them in a bag and then I gave them to her. She said,
Exactly the right thing to do. So there was so much more to talk about, and I just got the hook. I just got told. I have an evaluation that you're supposed to do, and I will stick around and you can ask me questions and we can look at other things. I want you to really walk away with hope. You know more than, I hope, just by a show of hands, do you know more than when you got there?
Yeah.
Okay. I want you to be the protective factor. I want to be a foster parent. I can't. I live on a farm with chemicals and animals and dogs and tractors and all sorts of things. You are a huge protective factor as foster parents, and I thank you. My hat off to you. You're doing something that I wish I could do. Remember, we have the power to be that big spongy bandage of love around the kids in our life, whether we're a caregiver or a parent or a guardian or grandma or grandpa. So thank you all for what you do. I'm humbled in your presence. And thank you for thinking that I had anything worth saying. So I've got, so there's evaluations over there, there's materials. Please make sure you evaluate me so I know whether to come back or not.